Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I think Professor Johnson has ably demonstrated that the S150 cannot pass rational basis scrutiny because it simply arbitrarily discriminates among different things. I would point out in addition that S150 would mark the most extensive gun ban in the history of this republic. The 1994 ban listed 19 brands of firearms that could not be made. S150 lists over 150. The 1994 ban banned firearms with a pistol grip that protruded below the rest of the firearm. S150 simply bans any gun with a pistol grip. And I would point out that virtually the only reason I can't say every is because I haven't examined everyone, but every rifle and shotgun, semi-automatic, made today has a pistol grip. It's not a separate pistol grip, it's just the area that your hand fits around makes it more comfortable to fire. So essentially, this would ban any semi-automatic long arm that has a replaceable magazine. The categories seem to be focused mostly on style, as they say, military style. But the fact of the matter is no one would go to war with a semi-automatic AR-15, the shooting one shot per trigger pull. They go to war with an M16 that fires fully automatic in 3-round burst. The price of the creation of the assault rifle, which is fully automatic, the price for it was that they had to drop the power of the cartridge by 50% because you can't fire a full-powered military round at full automatic without getting the heck beaten out of you by recoil. So in the case of the AR-15, we dropped the power of the military rifle from 2,400 foot-pounds of energy to slightly over 1,200, a 50% decline, which is average for that type of thing. When you go back to semi-automatic, turn it into a semi-automatic, what you have is simply a firearm of half military power. Then if we look at the various band features, apart from the having of the power, the pistol grip, there's been statements I've heard that the pistol grip is somehow meant to promote unaimed fire from the hip. That only happens in Rambo movies. The military would not be issuing firearms to people that are conducive to being fired from the hip without aiming because essentially you can't hit anything in that mode. And if you stop to think about the angle of the pistol grip, it would actually make it harder to fire from the hip than from the shoulder because the military doesn't want you firing from the hip. The threaded barrel, I cannot see any connection between a threaded barrel and use in criminal conduct. What could it be? If we talk flash suppressors, I can tell you I've personally verified with an AR-15 in a darkened range, there is no flash, even if you take the flash suppressor off. That's mainly for M4s, M16s, where you're firing full automatic. You get the barrel nice and hot, and then you can see a flash. I would agree with Dr. Begg on one issue, which I promised my friend Clayton Kramer to raise. Clayton has written a book on the deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill and essentially what a disaster it has been for this country. He cites studies indicating that about 1,000 homicides a year are committed by people who have been diagnosed mentally ill and gone off their meds. And I would agree with Dr. Begg, therefore, that we have to treat the mentally ill, especially the dangerous ones, get them off the street where they can be treated, and that we're not doing a fraction enough of this at the moment. We can either try to get the violent mentally ill out of commission, or we can try to create a world in which it is safe to have violent mentally ill people on the street. I suggest the latter is simply impossible a task. I think that one of the arbitrary features of S150 is illustrated by a comparison of two firearms, the AR-15 and the Mini-14. Both shoot the same cartridge, the .223. Both take 20 to 30 round magazines. Both shoot at the same rate of fire, 1 shot per trigger pull. Both weigh about the same and have about the same length. The AR-15 is classed under the bill as one of the prohibited forms of firearm. The Mini-14 is listed specifically under the sections which exempt it from any possible ban. Yet the two firearms are functionally identical. The only difference is one of them has a wooden stock and the other has a plastic one. I think, as Professor Johnson pointed out, to pass any level of scrutiny, There has to be a relationship between the statute, a provable relationship between the statute and an important social goal. And it must not unnecessarily impact lawful exercises of rights. I think we can see that S150's categories have no relationship to criminal use, and that they exempt or control firearms of exactly the same type. I would point out one last thing, which is, as far as burdening rights, there was only one Adam Lanza. There was only one Seng Hui Chu. But S150 attempts to deal with their cases, their violent cases, by regulating the other 300 million Americans' conduct of their exercise of their constitutional rights. S150 is
arbitrary standards fail any test for constitutionality, and for that matter, for wise social policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hardy. Representative Adams, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I begin, I would like to state that my thoughts and prayers go out to the families, first responders, and the community of Newtown. I am here as a mother, grandmother, former deputy sheriff, and former legislator. This issue is not political to me, but it is personal. I spent over 17 years as a law enforcement officer in Orange County, Florida, during which time I had the unfortunate experience of looking down the barrel of a rifle with the assailant's finger on the trigger, knowing that if that trigger were pulled, I would not be here today. I have also experienced the fear that grasps you when the lasered sight from a 9mm Desert Eagle puts a dot on you. I tell you this so that you know that my comments here today are not based on any political motivation, but on my personal beliefs and experiences. As someone with a law enforcement background, I naturally consider whether a legislative proposal made under the banner of public safety would truly contribute to that worthy objective. Concerning the proposal to ban a wide variety of semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, and handguns, and ammunition magazines that hold 11 or more rounds, I think it's an easy question to answer. When Congress approved the 1994 ban, it required that a study of the ban's effectiveness be conducted. That study found that the banned weapons and magazines were never involved in more than a modest fraction of all gun murders. Several years later, a follow-up study found that assault weapons were used in a particularly small percentage of gun crimes, and that assailants fire less than 4 shots on average, a number well within the 10-round magazine limit imposed by the ban. Given the outcome of these studies and the fact that the nation's murder rate, which was already in decline prior to the 1994 ban, continues to decrease, legislation that seeks to ban semi-automatic firearms and restrict magazine capacity will not address the root causes of America's violent crime problem or greatly contribute to public safety. Because it is not the lack of laws that is the problem, it is the lack of enforcement of existing laws. 10 years ago, I ran for office because I watched as elected officials pass feel-good legislation without any regard for implementation and enforcement of such laws. As a law enforcement officer, I saw firsthand how difficult it was to convince state and federal agencies to prosecute criminals for illegal gun possession or other crimes. The attitude of many of the prosecutors that I worked with was that these type of crimes were nuisance cases that were a drain on their resources. If we do not prosecute those who try to purchase firearms illegally or possess firearms illegally, then what good does it do to pass more laws? In addition to enforcing already existing laws through prosecution, we must get a handle on how to keep firearms out of the hands of the mentally ill, a problem that my state of Florida has proactively addressed over the past 7 years. In 2006, as a member of the Florida House of Representatives, I sponsored House Bill 151, which required the state to create and maintain a database of persons adjudicated mentally defective or committed to mental institutions. The bill also required that authorized law enforcement to disclose the collected data to federal government agencies and other states for use exclusively in determining the lawfulness of a firearm sale or transfer. 2 years later, another bill I sponsored expanded the use of the mental health database so that law enforcement could also check residents applying for concealed carry permits and firearm licenses, and expanded the definition of adjudicated mentally defective to include those involuntarily committed to outpatient mental health treatment centers. Both of these bills are excellent examples of laws that improve public safety by keeping firearms out of the hands of the mentally ill without endangering the freedoms of law-abiding gun owners. We are at a turning point now. You have an opportunity to do what is right, and that may not be the easiest route. It is not time for feel-good legislation so you can say you did something, but it is time for a true discussion on the culture of violence and how to prevent more violent crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much.